6:30. Would you please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Okay, we have a pretty tight and concise agenda tonight. I'll entertain, I'm not aware of any changes to the agenda. Does anybody have any? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Public comments. We have one person signed up, Terry Dale. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Make sure the clerk gets one so it gets entered in the record. Thank you.
We can share.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Hello all. My name is Terry Dale. I live at 615 North Providence Street, the street that runs parallel to Broom Street behind the BB&T Bank. And I'm here on behalf of the residents of North Providence Street, probably a lot of other residents of the town, to talk just a little bit about the parking lot on the back side of the BB&T Bank building. It's a beautiful building from the front, but the back side's not quite as attractive as the front side. So what we wanted to talk about was whether or not we might be able to get some support from the town in terms of either getting BB&T to invest in some landscaping on the back strip of that parking lot between the street and the building, or if BB&T is not willing to consider doing that on their own, that maybe the town would consider it, and if that option doesn't work out, then the residents would like to contribute their labor and to try to do something to improve that space. The package I've handed out includes a little background on the request that we actually made to BB&T back in January, and it also includes some pictures of the back of the building. As you probably know, when that building was built, there was really no requirement for them to put screening that would separate the building from the residential area. So it's not very attractive. And I've included some pictures that show what people's living rooms actually look into at the back of that building, right into security lights, right into headlights. And then it's just not very well maintained in the back either. So we'd like to see that improve with some landscaping. The back picture is just a quick mock-up of what it might look like if there were some landscaping put in place. There is some additional history. BB&T denied our request to put some landscaping in without any comment. And Mr. Ferguson went over and had a conversation with them a few weeks ago in which they said that the main reluctance that they had was related to security, which I think is kind of bogus. The reality is, I think that what they're concerned about is money. They don't want to spend it. They've got the building up on the market for sale, and we would like to see them improve it before they sell it by putting in some landscaping. And I think that what we're asking for is not a brick wall. It's not to hide the building. It's some nice landscaping that would make the building look attractive. So my question is whether or not the town would be willing to help BB&T come around to our way of thinking, and if not, whether or not there might be a way that we could combine the efforts of the town and the labor of the community to help. I'd also comment that there's been a lot of investment on North Providence Street over the last several years. I myself have bought 3 houses and renovated them, and there are several other houses, some of them new. Mr. Madeup just bought a property on that street, and so I think it's to the town's benefit to try to get BB&T to improve that street to the degree that they're willing. Thank you.
Thank you. you got a copy for the record, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's it for public comments. Consent agenda, we have 10 items on it. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Okay, next up, presentation, Mr. Rory, transportation update.
There we go. All right. Mayor, Board of Commissioners, Dennis Rory, Development Services Director, Town Engineer. Have a brief presentation for you tonight, just a transportation update about what's going on in the community. This shouldn't take too long, but at any time, if you have any questions, feel free to ask your questions as we're moving forward, and I'll answer them along the way. We'll go through a brief summary of just some overall transportation investments that are happening in the community, drill down a bit on some regional project updates, local project updates, and then we'll finish out with a little bit about how the community can get engaged on some of the upcoming public engagement opportunities. So there's a good summary slide of, I'm calling these transportation infrastructure investments. Oftentimes, I think when we talk about transportation broadly, we're probably talking about large construction projects, and those are part of how we invest in our transportation infrastructure, but this particular slide's a good snapshot of different types of investments broken up by developer-funded, town-funded, and other. And other really means kind of a combination of, it could be a combination of town and developer funds. It could be some state funds. I won't go through each project in grave detail, but I think this is a very good slide for us to kind of look at to see the broad level of investments that are happening in our transportation infrastructure. Just to help everybody with some acronyms, if you're not familiar, this STBGDA, that's Surface Transportation Block Grant Direct Attributable Money. Very long name, but wanted you to know what that acronym meant. That's essentially federal money that gets passed through and makes it to the towns locally. You'll see later in the presentation some projects that may be candidates for those particular funds. CDBG, that's Community Development Block Grant. SPOT, Strategic Prioritization Office Team. And so just now that we got the acronyms out of the way, again, you have some developer-funded projects, and these top two are really about some intersection projects that we have slated to be built by developers later this fall, maybe even earlier into next year. Kensington Drive, Waxhaw Marvin Road, that's also the same kind of developer will be making some contributions there. The two projects below that are in asterisks, those are tied to a development project that has not been approved, but if it does get approved, these are the types, these are the intersections where we're expecting to see some investments. So let me stop here. Any questions on what we see up here? Okay. Something that the community and you all around the dais have heard about recently is the state has announced an $80 million investment in roadway widening for Highway 16 or Providence Road from Ray Road to Waxhaw Parkway. That's a very significant investment into our transportation infrastructure, and that crosses municipalities, that kind of crosses Weddington, Marvin, and Waxhaw, so it certainly has more than just a local benefit, but it's certainly a huge investment in our transportation infrastructure. The state accelerated the right-of-way acquisition year to 2021 and correspondingly accelerated the construction year to 2023, where it was at 2024. One thing that doesn't show up here is at one point this was two different projects with two different construction years, and they combined those construction years and moved them up to 2023 to bring about construction a year quicker. This slide, although, and I'll recognize it's not necessarily legible at this scale, but I put it in here for anyone who may want to download the information later. All of the red text is really intended to show the decisions that the state made to accelerate the construction schedule of Highway 16 in response to what they have known and what we experience every day, and that's that Highway 16 certainly needs some attention in terms of providing some congestion relief and vehicular mobility. So Gray Byram and Highway 16 is a project that I think we've heard about over time as well. Just want to give you a brief update on what's going on there. This project started really, yes, sir.
Could you just go back to the Highway 16 and just explain for the public? It seems like a long way off, but there's a lot of things that have to occur from, what does this really mean to right away to?
Yeah, well, there's a significant amount that has already occurred in terms of the state had to rank this project among other projects throughout the region. As there's a statewide competition, but this particular project competed very well at a regional level. From this point moving forward, the project actually has to be designed. It's currently not designed. There's a certain level of planning that has already occurred, but that planning will need to be followed up by design, which can take a year, maybe a little bit longer. Following that design, you start to get into, things like this right-of-way acquisition. So if you kind of take today, let's just say today was the start date. It is not the start date, but as an example for your question, if today were the start date and it took maybe a year, year and a half to design, we're into the 2018, maybe even 2019 timeframe. Did you have a question?
No.
So in the 2018-2019 design timeline, they will take that design out to the public. We will get a chance to look at it, make comments. The public will get a chance to make a certain level of comments. And so there's a certain level of negotiation that's going to happen between the design phase and when right-of-way starts to get acquired. And these things take time largely because the state wants to ensure that everybody has an opportunity to participate in the engagement process so that clearly they understand that the community is in support of a huge investment like $80 million in a road project. So then 2021, again, right-of-way starts. Right-of-way is on a schedule that is not quite as easy to control as maybe a design schedule. So that again there's a lot of negotiation that happens with different property owners that are affected by the widening project. So they build time into their schedule for that. And then the work has to be bid out to a contractor. And there's time that it takes to bid work out to a contractor. And so that could easily move us into the 2023 timeframe just to get those mechanics and that process to happen to get us to a point to where the state's ready to construct the project.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So a project that we have recently been working with NCDOT's Division 10 on is the Gray Byram and Providence Road intersection project. This kind of our planning efforts maybe started fall of 2016, could have even started a little earlier than that, but we worked with Union County to plan out different intersection improvements. This happened to be an intersection where we planned to originally realign the intersection as shown on this particular graphic. We were very fortunate in July that we were approved for funding for that realignment. The caveat is that in order to proceed with the design that's shown, that would take us at least probably 2 to 3 years to do that, more like 3 years to get that project built. Recently, we had been in conversation with NCDOT about some different funding that they potentially have available, and it's more than potentially, but it's funding that they have available to maybe not realign the project as shown, but to add turn lanes on Providence Road and a traffic signal at Gray Byram, and that could be done in maybe the 2019 time frame. So that saves us a year, and we also gain some some economies of scale in terms of funding and being able to use a different funding source through the state and developer contributions to build those turn lanes and that traffic signal. If you go a little farther north on 16, you have the intersection of Bonds Grove Church and 16. So we were again pursuing a very similar type of realignment where Bonds Grove Church would be realigned to the north. And if I back up one slide, the two projects are linked, but by working with the state and being able to find a different funding source, that is potentially freeing up some funds to possibly look at the Bonds Grove Church and Highway 16 intersection on a much quicker path than we were able to look at it otherwise. And so if you were to follow the bullets on the right-hand side of the presentation, you'll see the same fall 2016 kind of planning time frame. We also submitted this project for this STP GDA funding. We were not successful in that particular funding pursuit. However, as recent as maybe last week, this project is being reconsidered as funds are becoming available in this same DA funding pool. So there's a lot of things happening at this particular intersection from a funding perspective. No decisions have been made by the decision-making body that handles the DA money, but just know that that dialogue is happening and is happening in real time. Any questions on that? I feel like I said a lot. Okay, one thing I wanted to highlight, and some of you all have seen this, but these level of transportation investments, which are very significant in my opinion, they're happening largely because of the regional participation that's happening. It happens at a staff level, it happens at the elected level with everyone that sits around the dais. And so I just wanted to point this out so that we all could kind of see what's happening. Pretty much on a daily basis, someone is participating in all of these processes at any given time. So just kudos to everyone who's been able to participate in these processes. Talk a little bit very briefly about Kensington Drive in the eastern section. You've heard about this project quite a bit over the past year or so, but this project is under design. This is a $2.5 million widening project from Connells Point to Providence Road on Kensington Drive. We've received the 70% design plans, which we also call those right-of-way plans. They are currently being reviewed, and we're working with the design consultant on review comments. We would anticipate dialogue, not physical construction, but dialogue about preliminary utility relocations occurring later this fall. So just wanted to give you all a heads up of what's coming there. Another way in which you all have invested in your transportation infrastructure is through the sidewalk retrofit policy. Sidewalks are a very big part of our transportation network. We spend a lot of time talking about roads, but sidewalks are very important from a mobility perspective, and everyone unfortunately doesn't have an automobile, so this may be their primary mode of transportation, walking to and from where they have to go. We've been fortunate in the sense that we've developed a sidewalk retrofit policy that allows us to rank and score sidewalks based off of their different priorities, assign a certain level of cost to those sidewalks, and then start to figure out how to design and construct those. And so we have done everything up into the stage of designing and constructing those sidewalks, but and I anticipate the design discussion starting to happen later this fall. And this is probably one of the, in my opinion, maybe it's unfortunate at times it gets kind of lost in the shuffle a bit, just as a broad statement, but street maintenance. One of the ways in which the town has consistently invested in the transportation infrastructure is to pay street maintenance activities. And so what we've done recently this year is we've kind of developed different resurfacing schedules and lists so that we're able to kind of communicate out to the community which streets we're planning to resurface and on a schedule that we think is fairly reliable. And if that schedule were to change, we have a way to communicate with our public on any schedule changes. But maintaining the existing asphalt is a pretty big deal, and it's happening, and we've gotten a lot of positive feedback recently about some of the work that's happening. And again, I know this is wordy, and I just said this to someone earlier, this isn't intended to be read right here tonight, but if you do download the presentation, you can kind of get an understanding of different public engagement opportunities that are on the horizon. One is for our 2020 to 2029 Transportation Improvement Program. Feel free to follow the websites that are listed in this particular document and figure out ways that you can kind of voice different feedback on the upcoming TIP. Also, you will see that the CRTPO is doing an update on their public involvement plan, and they're soliciting feedback as a part of their update to their public involvement plan. So these are some ways very quickly, or on the horizon rather, that the community can get involved in different public engagement opportunities that have a direct impact to the local transportation network. Any questions on any of what I...
Just a comment. For people that don't recognize the amount of effort that went into this, it's been monumental. It began with Mr. Wood and Dennis, and it continues to today. And, maybe 2 years ago, nobody knew where the problems were. Now we do. It's being followed up, and I'm going to give the credit for Providence Road improvements primarily to three gentlemen, Steve, Dennis, and Jim Warner. And if it hadn't been for their engagement with the state, the county, and so forth, we probably would have been another year or two, and only half of Ray, from Ray to Cuthbertson might have been done. So it's engagement with the people around us that has brought this to this point. Thank you all, the three of you, very much.
Can you comment, this is Waxhaw view, but just outside the borders as you're heading toward Charlotte, I know Marvin, your participation in the county, there's a broader regional set of efforts underway as well, and specifically we get asked a lot about Newtown, the roundabouts, are they ever going to come and all that kind of stuff. Do you have any, are you aware of what's going on there, or at a general sense?
At a general sense, but I'm cautious in terms of I don't know enough about the different investment schedules outside of Waxhaw, so different folks may be interested in projects at some of the at an intersection you mentioned, but I can't really tell you where that is in the process. I could certainly get that information over.
That'd be great.
So it can get distributed out to whomever needs it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Dennis.
Absolutely.
Okay, next up, reports. Commissioner Warner.
I hope I don't get too long-winded, but I would like to follow up on, I filled in for Steve this past week on the CRTPO meeting, and it was a real educational, education in politics, and who really wields the power. I think the biggest issue was we had a vote that was, we lost, we had 13-3 and we lost. Was the vote because Charlotte, when they vote, they get 49% of the vote. So if only two towns and 3 counties, that's Union, Mecklenburg, and Iredale, vote for Charlotte, they get their way. It involved a bridge across the Catawba River into southern Gaston County. And in my opinion, the only reason why I could justify it was the developers wanted to build out southern Gaston County rather than using the cities that were already there. Which brings up the subject of sprawl. I mean, everybody blames us for sprawl. We're trying to build a nice little community here. We need transportation to get here. We don't want large lots. We don't want take-up half-acre lots. And we want developers, but we want to control them. So, you heard my philosophy. You hear about politics. Thank you.
Commissioner Stewart?
I do have some comments. And this is a difficult situation and issue that I'm going to talk to the people of Waxhaw, all of the people who supported me, who asked me to run for commissioner, who elected me, 779 people, and who I serve all 17,000 people in this town and do the best job that I can do along with this board. We may not always agree, but when we come back to the table, we work it out. But there's an issue in this town and an individual, and I'm not going to speak names, but it's time that after 11 months of harassment, after 11 months of emails, and now Facebook posts out to the public in Waxhaw that have harassed me, that has slandered me, that has lied on me, to the point where it has crossed the line to be is disgustingly unacceptable. None of the things, and I'm sure plenty of you in the audience have read these things because you've called me and told me. And none of them are true, and it's time for me to defend myself. And that's what I'm doing. I will not accept it any longer without defending myself in public from this seat in any way possible that I need to. And I urge each one of you, if you need to talk to me about anything, my number is the town number, and Melody or Kelly will get me the message, and I will call you, or I will meet with you, and I will sit down and talk to you. But I am done. I will not be accused of the things that I have been accused of. When I come here and I serve this town, gladly, willingly, and I love this town, I will not be called the things and slandered the things that I have been done ever again. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fitzgerald?
Well, my comment is pretty much the opposite of Ms. Stewart. I'm proud of our town that we don't have a big rallyism like Charlottesville. We don't have a Baltimore. We are proud and we talk things out as we go. We do it in a manner of not physical, but we may speak out and we talk to each other and we work things out. And I'm very proud of this community to do such. We don't get physical, we don't hurt anybody, and thank God we live in this town.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrow?
Sure do. Last week, or a weekend ago, I was privileged to attend the Back to School Bash. And I saw hundreds of people from Waxhaw helping hundreds of other people from Waxhaw. It was very entertaining. The police department was so well represented. The people of Waxhaw were so well represented. And kids were happy, happy, happy at the end of the day. And that's what it's all about, helping each other in very positive ways. And we should learn something, and maybe next year we'll participate even more so. Part of it was the Samaritan's feet, and if anybody wants to see a picture of Chief Ice sitting there washing little kids' feet and fitting them out with new socks and shoes, I have them. Thank you very much, and thanks to the organizers.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Hunt?
Good evening. Thank you. I just wanted to thank our event staff, our town staff, the police department. We've had another very successful year of jamming by the tracks every Friday night. I think we only got rained on maybe once or twice, and the time we did, it was a passing thing. I also want to just comment on yesterday's big event here in Waxhaw as I walked around and rode around town, and right before the event, I think a lot of folks got into it, and it, again, goes to show the hometown spirit that we have. Thank you. Yeah, no doubt. I should have worn sunscreen.
Manager Ferguson?
A couple items tonight. The consent agenda tonight had an item where the town board approved an agreement with the Waxhaw Women's Club for continued cooperation and partnership on parking in the downtown. The agreement, as approved tonight, had a 3-year term so that we share parking on the lot that's right beside the Waxhaw Women's Club. And that agreement has an automatic renewal clause that unless one of the parties give notice, it continues in perpetuity for a while. That gives the town the right to program that parking lot for certain events like the Kaleidoscope Festival, 4th of July, Autumn Treasures, and the Christmas Parade, and then gives the town the right to have some other events in the facility from time to time. This is a good agreement, and it was one that you asked that we work on in the budget process, so that is the culmination of that effort, and thank you for approving it tonight. It gives some certainty to the organization, also gives some certainty to the town as far as downtown parking, so a win-win for the town and for the club there. As a recap, on August 14th, the town board met here in this building for a board retreat. Covered a lot of ground in the day there, starting with a recap of the citizen survey that's been presented a couple times, but just an overview of that, as well as some recap of what's happened since the last retreat that was in the January timeframe, as far as some strategic initiatives that have been accomplished. Quite a bit had been accomplished by staff, and so I wanted to applaud the work that was done by staff at the various department levels to bring a lot of those projects to fruition and to get to 100%. There are a number of items that are still in process, but by and large there are a huge number that had been completed and need to be acknowledged as being completed and successful. We spent a good part of the retreat talking about the financing capability of the town and our overall ability to put together a 5-year capital improvement plan, or CIP as it may be called. That 5-year CIP would be the roadmap forward to provide public facilities, to provide infrastructure such as roads or parks. And so we're working on a very rough draft of that 5-year CIP. The board saw that at your retreat on the 14th. That will be fleshed out over the coming months. We'll bring that back to you and share it with you and get feedback as we work on that to bring it to a final version for your approval or adoption at a point in the future. That CIP work is being done in tandem with the work that we're doing to look at our overall financial capabilities and our potential financing capacity. When we talk about financing, we're not just talking about debt, but we're also looking at ways that we can use current pay-as-you-go funds and identify other pay-as-you-go funds that might be the source of funding for some of these projects. But at the same time, we're going to bring forward information to you, as we talked about at the retreat, to look at what our financing capability might be if we have the need for some debt that would span a 20-year time frame. We did talk about the short-term debt and the long-term debt options that the town has, and that will be an ongoing conversation as you decide and deliberate as to what methods to use to deliver some of the projects that are on your to-do list and on the public's wish list. It was a very productive day, I thought, and I look forward to getting more feedback from the board. Some of you have shared feedback, and I appreciate that. We'll try to take that feedback and be responsive to it. A couple other things that happened at that retreat is we had an update on our communications plan. We had an update on our TAP grant from Kurt White, and then Dennis Rory provided some of the same information that you heard tonight and the public heard tonight. So I want to thank them for their participation. We are standing ready to follow up with additional work sessions as needed, and think that might be productive after there's been some time to assimilate what was shared that day. There was a good bit shared that day, and our staff's ready to answer questions or to funnel those questions to the folks at Davenport and Company if they get into the technicalities. But thank you for your participation, and please let us know any way that we can provide information for you to look at that moving forward. Those are my items, and I'm happy to answer a question if needed.
Questions for the manager? Okay, thank you. We have one item of new business. Attorney Chaplain Spencer is going to briefly introduce the action to consider approval of an ordinance to allow the sale of alcoholic beverages before noon on Sundays at licensed premises. Local ordinance number 2017005.
Thank you. This summer, the legislature passed what is commonly referred to as the brunch bill. It allows the sale of alcoholic beverages to move from 12 o'clock noon to 10 o'clock a.m. This is a little bit different. The sale of alcoholic beverages is regulated by the state ABC Commission, and also your local ABC commissions. But this one's an opt-in statute, so local municipalities have to pass an ordinance in order for this particular statute to apply. So if you pass an ordinance, it will allow the sale to move back on Sunday to 10 a.m. However, the entity must still have a permit, and they'll be under all the other regulations of the ABC Commission. You have a model ordinance that was passed through numerous municipalities, and it's just tweaked for the town of Waxhaw, but it's pretty straightforward, and it's there for your consideration.
This is the template that came down from the league.
It is.
Yeah, been used
It's
a couple of dozen.
most municipalities followed this template, and then it references our particular code section where we would put it into our town ordinance if passed. But other than that, it's the language from the league.
So any comments, questions, actions, motions?
I do have a question,
Yes, sir.
and this is directed to the attorney. Is this, so our current ABC store services permittees or folks that hold permits outside of our town. Would this also affect them or just?
No, because we don't have the regulatory authority for the regulation outside our municipal limits. So this would only be those located within our municipal limits. That would have to be a county action to opt in.
Any other questions?
I'd like to make a motion
Okay.
that this board approves the action that's up for consideration of local ordinance number 2017005, section 130.03E.
So we have a motion on the table to adopt the ordinance designating the sale of alcohol beverages before noon on Sundays at licensed premises. Any further discussion?
I'd just like to make a statement that I'm a teetotaler. I don't drink a dime a bit. And personally, I wished it didn't have to do this, but I think it's good that we are regulating it. That's the most important thing about alcohol. As a matter of fact, just yesterday I had some comments from Butch Kelly, who lives right around the corner from our new brewery, and he's not very happy with the way some people are behaving when they have alcohol. So, but we're doing our best to regulate it.
Other comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We have nothing for closed session, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. I got to keep you guys on the edge of your seat. No comments.